The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space like a desperate scream. Admiral Zexthera of the Galactic Rescue Federation felt her 4 hearts sink as the distress signal reached their monitoring station. Another colony world was dying, and they were running out of options. "Admiral, the signal is coming from Kepler 442b, reported Lieutenant Vashkol, his tentacles dancing across the holographic display. "It's the human agricultural colony of New Eden. Population, approximately 50,000 civilians." Zexthera's scaled hide rippled with concern. The humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having joined only 30 standard years ago. Their species was still considered primitive by most galactic standards, though they had shown remarkable adaptability. What worried her more was the nature of the threat. "What's the situation on the ground?" she asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had coordinated rescues across dozens of star systems. "The Vaktheri hive has launched a full-scale invasion," Vashkol replied, his voice trembling slightly. The Vaktheri were one of the most feared species in known space, insectoid warriors bred for conquest, with technology that could overwhelm most civilized worlds. Long-range scans show at least 20 hive ships in orbit. Ground forces number in the millions. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what a Vaktheri invasion meant. The insectoids didn't just conquer, they consumed everything in their path, turning living worlds into barren feeding grounds for their ever-expanding hives. "Send out the emergency summons," Zexthera ordered. "Full priority. We need every available rescue fleet in this sector." The emergency summons was a sacred protocol in galactic law. When issued, every member species of the Galactic Rescue Federation was obligated to respond with whatever forces they could spare. It was a system that had saved countless worlds over the past millennium. Within hours, the responses began flooding in. The Altarian Medical Corps committed 3 hospital ships. The Centaurian Engineering Guild pledged 2 construction vessels for refugee transport. The Syrian Defense Force promised a squadron of light cruisers. Each response was carefully logged and appreciated, but Zexthera knew it wouldn't be enough. The Vaktheri hive was not some minor raiding force. Intelligence reports indicated this was a full harvesting fleet, the kind deployed to strip entire star systems of resources. Even with all the promised aid, they would be vastly outnumbered and outgunned. "Admiral," Vashkol called out, "we're receiving an unusual response to the summons." "From whom?" "That's just it, ma'am. The signal is coming from the Orion Arm, but it's not from any registered Federation member. The ship registry shows Terra." Zexthera's eyes widened. Terra was the human homeworld, but Earth had never been considered a military power. The humans were known for their agricultural expertise and surprisingly resilient colonial efforts, but their military was considered laughably primitive by galactic standards. They still used projectile weapons and chemical propulsion for much of their technology. "Put them through," she ordered. The communication channel crackled to life, and a human voice filled the bridge. It was steady, confident, and carried an undertone that made Zexthera's scales tingle with an emotion she couldn't identify. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We received your emergency summons regarding New Eden. We're en route with a relief fleet." "Admiral Chen," Zexthera replied carefully, "while we appreciate Earth's willingness to help, you should know that this is a Vaktheri hive invasion. The threat level is classified as extinction event. Perhaps your forces would be better utilized in evacuation support roles." There was a pause on the channel, and, when Admiral Chen spoke again, there was something in her voice that made every being on the bridge straighten up unconsciously. "Admiral Zexthera, with respect, you called for help. We're bringing it. Terran Defense Force Fleet 7 is currently 12 hours out from Kepler 442b. We'll handle the Vaktheri." Before Zexthera could respond, the channel closed. She stared at the communication panel in bewilderment. Fleet 7? The humans had numbered fleets? And what did Admiral Chen mean by "we'll handle the Vaktheri"? "Lieutenant, pull up everything we have on human military capabilities," she ordered. Vashkol's tentacles worked frantically across his console. Ma'am, according to our records, the humans have a small system defense force consisting of approximately 50 vessels, mostly converted civilian craft. Their largest ship is classified as a heavy cruiser, though by our standards it would barely qualify as a frigate. Something's not right, Zexthara muttered. She had been coordinating galactic rescues for over 2 centuries, and her instincts were telling her that there was more to this human response than met the eye. Meanwhile, on the surface of New Eden, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Mayor Jonathan Walsh crouched behind the twisted wreckage of what had once been the colony's main administrative building, clutching an outdated pulse rifle as Vakthari warriors scuttled through the burning streets of Haven City. The insects were terrifying up close, each one standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 limbs ending in razor-sharp claws and mandibles that could tear through most known materials. Their chitinous armor was nearly impervious to standard infantry weapons, and they moved with a horrifying coordination that spoke of their hive mind intelligence. "Mr. Mayor," called out Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the colony's chief of security, as she slid into cover beside him. "We've lost contact with sectors 7 through 12. The bugs are overrunning everything." Walsh nodded grimly. They had known this day might come. New Eden was far from the core worlds, vulnerable and isolated. But they had hoped their insignificance would protect them. Apparently, the Vakthari didn't discriminate, any world with biomass was fair game. "How long until the evacuation ships arrive?" he asked. "At least 18 hours, sir. And that's assuming the Galactic Rescue Federation can get past the hive ships in orbit." 18 hours. Walsh looked out at the chaos consuming his city and knew they didn't have 18 minutes, let alone 18 hours. The colonists were brave, but they were farmers and engineers, not soldiers. Their weapons were designed for dealing with local wildlife, not an invasion force equipped with technology that made their equipment look like Stone Age tools. A new sound filled the air, a deep, thrumming roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. Both humans looked up to see something impossible. Vakthari warriors were fleeing. The insects that had been methodically slaughtering their way through Haven City were suddenly retreating, their movement showing something Walsh had never seen in a Vakthari before: fear. What could make them run? Rodriguez whispered. Their question was answered moments later when the sky lit up with streaks of fire. But these weren't the familiar green plasma bolts of Vakthari weapons or the blue energy beams of Federation technology. These were something else entirely, white-hot trails of destruction that carved through the air with surgical precision. High above the planet's atmosphere, Admiral Chan stood on the bridge of the TSF Indomitable, watching her fleet emerge from hyperspace jump. Around her flagship, 97 other vessels materialized in perfect formation, a sight that would have been impossible according to every galactic military doctrine she had ever studied. "Ma'am," reported Commander James Park, all ships reporting ready status. "The Vakthari fleet is moving to intercept." Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. 20 hive ships, each one massing nearly 3 times the tonnage of her largest vessel. According to every simulation the galactic community had ever run, her fleet should have been obliterated within minutes. There was just one problem with those simulations: they had been run using galactic assumptions about warfare. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Execute Operation Thunderbolt." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come, though most beings would struggle to understand how it was possible. The human fleet didn't engage in the traditional manner, long-range energy exchanges followed by boarding actions. Instead, they did something that violated every principle of civilized space combat. They attacked like predators. The first wave came from the destroyers, sleek ships that moved with impossible speed and agility, dancing between Vakthari plasma bolts as if the deadly energy weapons were mere annoyances. Instead of returning fire with energy weapons, they launched what appeared to be primitive kinetic projectiles. The Vakthari fleet commanders initially dismissed these attacks as desperate gestures. Kinetic weapons were considered obsolete, easily deflected by energy shields and armor plating. They learned their error when the first human torpedo struck the hive ship consuming dark. The warhead contained no exotic matter, no antimatter, no zero-point energy. It was filled with something far more terrifying, a substance the humans called RDX, enhanced with a molecular destabilizer that had been developed in the deepest black sites of Earth's military-industrial complex. When it detonated, it didn't just damage the hive ship's hull, it converted the ship's own armor into a secondary explosive. The consuming dark simply disappeared. One moment it was a kilometer-long instrument of conquest, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and debris. The Vaktheri fleet reeled from this impossible development. Their hive mind struggled to process how such a primitive attack had bypassed their shields and armor so completely. The confusion lasted exactly 2.3 seconds, long enough for the human fleet to prove that the first kill hadn't been lucky. 12 more hive ships died in the next 30 seconds, each one falling to weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their defenses. The remaining Vaktheri vessels tried to retreat, but discovered another terrifying aspect of human military doctrine: there was no retreat. The human ships pursued them with relentless efficiency, hunting them down one by one until the space around New Eden was clear. On the planet's surface, the ground-based Vaktheri forces found themselves facing an even more horrifying reality. The humans weren't content to simply clear orbital space, they were coming down to finish the job. The first sign of the surface assault came when the sky began to rain metal. Not the elegant, controlled deployment pods used by most galactic militaries, but crude, angular shapes that screamed through the atmosphere like meteorites. When they struck the ground, they disgorged soldiers that looked like something out of the Vaktheri's own nightmares. Human marines emerged from their drop pods encased in powered armor that made them look like mechanical demons. Unlike the sleek, graceful equipment used by most spacefaring species, human combat gear was brutal and practical. Every surface was covered in weapon mounts, sensor arrays, and what appeared to be trophies from previous battles. The Vaktheri warriors that had been terrorizing the human colonists suddenly found themselves facing beings that moved faster, hit harder, and showed absolutely no fear. Worse, the humans seemed to actually enjoy the combat, whooping and shouting as they tore through Vaktheri formations with weapons that defied galactic understanding. Sergeant Mike Thompson of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Unit vaulted over a piece of rubble, his assault rifle chattering as it sent tungsten penetrators through 3 Vaktheri warriors. The insect's armor, which had shrugged off everything the colonists could throw at it, parted like paper before his weapon's hypervelocity projectiles. "Contact left," called out Corporal Sandra Williams, her heavy weapon spinning up as she acquired targets. The Vaktheri tried to rush her position, but ran into a wall of depleted uranium rounds that turned their chitinous shells into pink mist. "This is too easy." Thompson laughed, reloading with practiced efficiency. "I thought these bugs were supposed to be tough." His comment was overheard by Mayor Walsh, who was watching the battle from his hiding spot in stunned disbelief. The same creatures that had been slaughtering his people were being hunted through the streets like prey by soldiers who seemed to view the entire deadly engagement as some kind of entertaining sport. "How are they doing this?" Rodriguez whispered, watching a human soldier actually leap onto a Vaktheri warrior's back and kill it with what appeared to be a simple knife. Walsh had no answer. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy had just been turned upside down. The friendly farmers and traders who had settled New Eden were apparently members of a species that could make the Vaktheri hive look like a minor inconvenience. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, not a single Vaktheri remained alive on New Eden's surface, and their orbital fleet was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. The human marines had suffered exactly 0 casualties, while eliminating an invasion force that should have been capable of conquering entire star systems. As the dust settled over Haven City, Admiral Chan's voice echoed from speakers throughout the colony. Her tone was professional, almost businesslike, as if she had just completed a routine training exercise rather than single-handedly eliminating an extinction-level threat. "This is Admiral Chan to New Eden Colony. The Vaktheri force has been neutralized. We're standing by to assist with cleanup and reconstruction. Our medical teams are en route to treat any injured civilians." Mayor Walsh stumbled out of his hiding spot, looking up at the clear sky where human ships now hung in protective formation. He had spent 30 years believing that Earth was a peaceful, almost primitive world populated by gentle farmers and philosophers. The revelation that humanity possessed military capabilities that could eliminate the galaxy's most feared threat with casual efficiency left him struggling to process reality. "Admiral Chen,
he managed to say into his communicator, "This is Mayor Walsh of New Eden."
How do we even begin to thank you for this? There was a brief pause before the Admiral's reply came back, and, when it did, there was something in her voice that sent chills down Walsh's spine, not fear, but the recognition that he had just glimpsed something vast and terrible that had been hiding behind humanity's peaceful facade.
"No thanks necessary, Mr. Mayor. We protect our own. Always." As rescue ships began landing in Haven City's central square, Walsh found himself wondering what other secrets Earth was keeping. If humanity could deploy this kind of military force with such casual efficiency, what did that say about their true capabilities? And, more importantly, why had they chosen to hide such power behind a facade of peaceful agricultural colonies? The questions would haunt him for days to come, but, for now, he was simply grateful to be alive. The Vaktheri hive had come to New Eden expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they had stumbled into something far more dangerous: humans who were willing to fight back. In the depths of space, emergency beacons carried news of the battle to every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple but revolutionary: the Vaktheri, the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had been utterly destroyed by a species most beings considered primitive and harmless. Everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity was about to change. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen anything like it. For the first time in over 800 years, an emergency session had been called to address what the Eltarian delegate was calling the human question. Representatives from 47 different species packed the great amphitheater, their conversations creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that the universal translators struggled to process. High Chancellor Morduan of the Centaurian Union called for order, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated light patterns. "We are here to discuss the recent incident at Kepler 442b. The floor recognizes Admiral Zexthera of the Galactic Rescue Federation." Zexthera rose gracefully, her forearms gesturing as she activated the central holographic display. The projection showed the New Eden system, with tactical overlays indicating ship positions and battle damage. Even 3 days after the engagement, the scale of destruction was staggering. "Honored delegates," she began, "what we witnessed at New Eden challenges everything we understand about human capabilities. In less than 7 hours, a single human fleet eliminated a Vaktheri harvesting force that our own analysts had classified as capable of conquering 3 core worlds." A ripple of nervous energy passed through the chamber. The Vaktheri hive had been the galaxy's boogeyman for millennia, a force so terrifying that most species would rather abandon entire star systems than face them in direct combat. The human fleet numbered 98 vessels, Zexthera continued, none larger than what we would classify as a heavy cruiser. They engaged 20 Vaktheri hive ships, each massing approximately 1.2 million tons, and achieved complete tactical victory with 0 losses. Delegate Thulak of the Syrian Defense Force raised his tentacled form. "Admiral, surely there must be some error in your data. No known weapons system can penetrate Vaktheri bioarmor. Their ships are grown, not built, with regenerative capabilities that allow them to repair damage in real time." "That's what we thought," Zexthera replied grimly. "Our long-range sensors recorded everything." The humans used kinetic weapons, primitive chemical explosives enhanced with molecular destabilizers. Somehow, they turned the Vaktheri's own bioarmor against them. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Molecular destabilizers were theoretical weapons that existed only in the most classified research files. The technology required to create them was beyond most species' capabilities, and the humans were supposed to be barely past their industrial age. "Order!" Chancellor Morduan pulsed. "We will hear from the human representative." A section of the chamber floor rose, revealing a simple platform where a single human woman stood waiting. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was unremarkable by most galactic standards, a bipedal mammal of average height, with no visible weapons, armor, or biotechnological enhancements. She looked like exactly what the galaxy had always assumed humans to be: harmless. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "I understand your confusion. Recent events have raised questions about my species' capabilities, and I'm here to provide clarification. Ambassador, interrupted Delegate Vashkreen of the Aquarian Collective, our intelligence indicates that Earth maintains only a small system defense force. Yet your Admiral Chen deployed nearly 100 warships. Where did these vessels come from? Ambassador Vasquez smiled, and something about the expression made several delegates unconsciously move back. Delegate Vashkreen, I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human military organization. Earth does indeed maintain a system defense force. What you observed at New Eden was the Terran Defense Force, a separate organization entirely. Please explain the distinction, Chancellor Morduan requested. The Earth System Defense Force protects our home system. The Terran Defense Force protects human interests wherever they might be threatened. TDF Fleet 7 was the closest available unit when we received the distress call from New Eden. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. If Fleet 7 was just one of multiple numbered fleets, how many ships did humanity actually possess? How many fleets does the Terran Defense Force operate? Asked Admiral Zexthera, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Currently? 15 full battle fleets, with 3 more in final construction phases. Each fleet averages 120 vessels, though fleet composition varies based on mission requirements. The chamber fell silent. 15 fleets meant nearly 2,000 warships, each apparently capable of destroying forces that could threaten entire star systems. The galaxy's understanding of the balance of power had just shifted dramatically. Delegate Thulak's tentacles writhed in agitation. Ambassador, why was this information never shared with the Galactic Council? Military transparency is required for all member species. With respect, Delegate, we're not a member species. Earth holds observer status only. We've never claimed Federation membership or sought galactic military integration. Vasquez paused, letting her words sink in. However, we have always honored our obligations to protect human civilians wherever they might be located. Meanwhile, aboard the TSF Indomitable in orbit around New Eden, Admiral Chen was dealing with a very different kind of diplomatic crisis. Her briefing room was packed with representatives from every major galactic news service, each one desperately trying to understand how humanity had managed to hide such devastating military capabilities. Admiral Chen, said Zenith Klar, senior correspondent for the Galactic Information Network, our viewers are struggling to understand how a species known for agricultural exports managed to develop weapons capable of defeating the Vaktheri. Can you comment on Earth's military research programs? Chen studied the assembled reporters, noting the mix of species represented. Altarians, Centaurians, Syrians, even a few Aquarians who had made the journey despite their environmental requirements. All of them looking at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed fear. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here, she replied. You're assuming we developed these weapons to fight the Vaktheri. The reality is much simpler, we developed them to fight each other. The briefing room fell silent. Zenith Klar's chromatic pattern shifted through several colors before settling on confusion blue. I'm sorry, Admiral, could you clarify that statement? Earth is what you might call a competitive environment, Chen explained. For most of our recorded history, human tribes, nations, and cultures have been in conflict with each other. Our weapons technology wasn't developed to fight aliens, it was developed to fight other humans. The Vaktheri just happened to encounter military systems designed for fighting the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Other humans? Asked a Syrian reporter, his translator struggling with the concept. Let me put it in perspective, Chen continued. The Vaktheri warrior you consider terrifying? On Earth, we call that Tuesday. Human soldiers train by fighting opponents who think like they do, move like they do, and use the same weapons they do. When you've spent your whole career preparing to fight someone who knows all your tricks, fighting insects becomes relatively simple. The implications were staggering. Most galactic species had evolved in relatively peaceful environments, developing space technology through cooperation and gradual advancement. The idea of a species that had literally weaponized competition was foreign to them. Admiral, pressed Zenith Klar, are you saying that humans consider each other more dangerous than the Vaktheri? Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. I'm saying that the Vaktheri fight to feed their hive. Humans fight because Tuesday ended in Y. There's a difference in motivation that translates directly to battlefield effectiveness. Down on New Eden's surface, the reconstruction efforts were providing their own revelations about human capabilities. Mayor Walsh stood in what had been Haven City's central square, watching human engineering teams work with efficiency that defied belief.
Mr. Mayor, called out Colonel Marcus Webb, the human officer coordinating ground operations, we should have basic infrastructure restored within 72 hours.
Full reconstruction will take about 2 weeks.
Walsh stared at him in disbelief.
Colonel, the Vaktheri destroyed 40% of the city. Our own estimates suggested 6 months minimum for basic repairs.
Different methodologies, Webb replied casually.
Human engineering doctrine prioritizes rapid deployment and battlefield repair.
We can't afford to wait 6 months when the next war might start tomorrow. As if to emphasize his point, a massive construction mech stomped past them, carrying prefabricated building sections that would have required crane teams and days of planning to move using standard galactic methods. The human machine simply picked them up and placed them where they needed to go, with its operator whistling what sounded like an ancient Earth melody.
Colonel, Walsh said carefully, I have to ask, if humans have this kind of technology, this kind of military power, why are we known throughout the galaxy as peaceful farmers? Webb's expression grew serious. Mr. Mayor, there's something you need to understand about human nature. We're very good at violence. Extremely good. Probably the best in the galaxy. But that doesn't mean we enjoy it or seek it out.
He gestured toward the reconstruction efforts, where human soldiers worked alongside colonists to repair damage and care for the wounded.
Violence is a tool we use when necessary.
The rest of the time, we prefer to grow things, build things, create things.
It's just that when someone threatens what we've built.
He didn't finish the sentence, but Walsh understood. The humans hadn't been hiding their military capabilities out of deception, they had been hoping never to need them.
Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Vasquez was fielding increasingly desperate questions from delegates who were trying to understand how the galactic power structure had shifted so dramatically overnight. Ambassador, said Delegate Mortheri of the Collective Defense Alliance, if humans possess such military capabilities, what assurance can you give that Earth won't use them aggressively? The same assurance we've always given, Vasquez replied calmly. Humans don't seek conflict. We respond to it. The Vaktheri attacked a human colony. We defended it. If another species attacks human civilians, we'll defend them too. If no one attacks us, we'll continue growing food and trading peacefully throughout the galaxy.
But surely you must understand how this appears to other species, pressed Chancellor Morduan. A civilization with such military power, keeping it secret.
We didn't keep it secret, Vasquez interrupted gently. We simply didn't advertise it. There's a difference. Anyone who wanted to know about human military capabilities could have asked. We would have told you. The question is, why didn't anyone ask?
The silence that followed was deafening. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. The galaxy had made assumptions about humanity based on their peaceful interactions and agricultural focus. No one had bothered to investigate further because no one had wanted to know.
Admiral Zexthera broke the silence. Ambassador, what are human intentions moving forward? Will Earth be seeking expanded territory, resources, or political influence?
Admiral, humans currently control exactly one star system and maintain colonies in 17 others.
We have no territorial ambitions beyond defending what we already have.
We seek no political influence beyond ensuring fair treatment for human civilians.
As for resources, Vasquez shrugged. We're farmers. We prefer to grow what we need rather than take what others have. Then, what do humans want? Asked Delegate Vashkreen. The same thing we've always wanted, Vasquez replied. To be left alone to live our lives in peace.
The only thing that's changed is that now everyone knows what happens to people who won't let us.
3 days later, the first human question began appearing on galactic intelligence assessments.
military analysts across the galaxy were scrambling to reassess threat levels, defensive strategies, and alliance structures based on the revelation that one of their neighbors was a species of apex predators who had been politely pretending to be harmless herbivores. The Altarian Strategic Command issued a classified report that would become legendary among military historians. Human military doctrine appears to be based on the assumption that any enemy they face will be approximately as dangerous as another human. This has led to the development of weapons and tactics optimized for fighting opponents with similar capabilities to themselves. Against any species with less aggressive evolutionary pressure, human forces can be expected to achieve overwhelming tactical superiority. The report went on to recommend that under no circumstances should any Altarian force engage human military units in direct combat, noting that attempting to fight humans with conventional tactics would be roughly equivalent to attacking a carnivore with herbivore behavioral patterns. Similar reports were being generated across the galaxy, each reaching the same basic conclusion: humanity was not the peaceful agricultural species they had pretended to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had evolved to fight other apex predators and had developed military technology accordingly. The galaxy's first glimpse of human military capabilities at New Eden had been impressive. What they didn't know was that Fleet 7 was considered a light patrol unit, equipped with older generation weapons systems and staffed primarily by reservists on routine deployment. When word reached Earth that their agricultural colonists were being threatened by hostile alien invaders, the response from the Terran High Command had been swift and decisive: deploy the nearest available unit to resolve the situation. They had dispatched Fleet 7 not because it was their most powerful force, but because it was convenient. The galaxy would learn this fact eventually, but, for now, they were still struggling to process the implications of what they had already seen. The humans had revealed themselves to be wolves in sheep's clothing, and no one was quite sure what that meant for the future. What they didn't know was that humanity was asking themselves the same question. For 30 years, they had maintained the fiction of being peaceful farmers, hoping that the galaxy's dangerous predators would overlook them in favor of easier prey. The Vaktheri attack on New Eden had ended that comfortable illusion. Now the galaxy knew what humans were capable of, and everything was about to change. 6 months after the New Eden incident, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new normal. Human colonies continued their agricultural exports, human traders maintained their peaceful commercial relationships, and human diplomats attended galactic functions with the same polite efficiency they always had. The only difference was that now everyone watched them with the careful attention usually reserved for sleeping predators. This delicate balance was about to be shattered. The first reports came from the Outer Rim territories, where long-range sensors detected something that made even the most experienced galactic observers question their instruments. A massive fleet was moving through deep space, not the sleek, elegant vessels of any known civilization, but something darker and more ominous. High Chancellor Admiral Zexthera reported to the Emergency Council session, "We're tracking approximately 300 vessels of unknown configuration. They're moving directly toward the core systems at sublight speed, ignoring all communication attempts." Chancellor Morduan's crystalline form pulsed with anxiety patterns. "Do we have any identification on these ships?" "Negative, sir. The vessels don't match any known design in our databases. However, their energy signatures are disturbing. Whatever power systems they're using, they're unlike anything we've encountered." Delegate Thulak raised his tentacles in concern. "Could this be another Vaktheri force?" "No," Zexthera replied grimly. "These ships are larger than Hive vessels. Much larger. Our best estimates suggest the smallest craft is equivalent to a Federation battlecruiser. The largest." She paused, checking her data again. "The largest appears to be nearly 8 kilometers long." A collective gasp swept through the chamber. Even the mighty Centaurian dreadnoughts topped out at 3 kilometers. Whatever was coming toward the core systems represented a level of military power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen. "How long until they reach inhabited space?" asked Chancellor Morduan. "At current velocity, approximately 18 standard hours until they reach the Proxima colonies. From there, it's a straight shot to the core systems." The chamber erupted in panicked discussion. The Proxima colonies housed nearly 4 billion beings across 7 star systems.
If this unknown fleet was hostile, it would represent the largest threat in galactic history.
We need to evacuate the colonies, declared Delegate Mortheri.
Begin immediate civilian withdrawals. Impossible, replied Admiral Zexthera. We don't have enough transport capacity for 4 billion beings.
Even if we started now, we could maybe evacuate 10% before this fleet arrives.
Then, we need to mount a defense, Thilak insisted. Assemble every available warship. Whatever this threat is, we have to try to stop it. The mathematics were sobering. The combined Galactic Defense Force could field approximately 800 ships on short notice.
Against 300 unknown vessels of apparently superior technology, the odds were not encouraging.
There is one option, Admiral Zexthera said quietly. We could request human assistance.
The chamber fell silent. In the months since New Eden, contact with humanity had been minimal and carefully managed.
Most species were still uncomfortable with the revelation that their peaceful neighbors were actually apex predators hiding behind a facade of agricultural innocence. Do we know if humans would even respond to such a request? Asked Chancellor Morduan. Unknown, Zexthera admitted. They're not Federation members.
They have no obligation to defend the core systems.
But they defended New Eden, pointed out Delegate Vashkreen.
They said they protect their own.
Maybe they consider the entire galaxy their territory now. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency communication system activated.
The voice that filled the great amphitheater was familiar to every being present, Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force.
Galactic Council, this is Admiral Chen. We've been monitoring the approaching fleet. We're en route to intercept. Chancellor Morduan activated his response system. Admiral Chen, while we appreciate Earth's concern, this threat is beyond what any single fleet can handle. Our estimates suggest over 300 hostile vessels. We're aware of the numbers, Chancellor. TDF Battle Group Alpha is moving to establish a defensive perimeter around the Proxima colonies. Estimated arrival time is 6 hours. Admiral Zexthera leaned forward. Admiral, what is the composition of Battle Group Alpha?
There was a pause before Chen responded, and, when she did, her voice carried a tone that made several delegates unconsciously step back from their communication panels.
Battle Group Alpha consists of TDF Fleets 1 through 5, supported by the Sol Defense Force and Colonial Marine Expeditionary Unit 7 through 15.
Total strength, 640 vessels and approximately 2 million combat personnel.
The silence that followed was deafening. 5 full battle fleets represented nearly the entire military strength of some galactic powers. That humanity could deploy such a force on short notice suggested military capabilities that made their demonstration at New Eden look like a minor skirmish. Admiral, Chancellor Morduan said carefully, may I ask where these fleets were positioned before this crisis? Fleet 1 was on routine patrol in the Outer Rim.
Fleets 2 and 3 were conducting training exercises in the Tau Ceti system.
Fleet 4 was in deep space refit, and Fleet 5 was providing security for human colonies in the Centauri sector. The implications were staggering.
Humanity had multiple fleets positioned throughout the galaxy, apparently conducting routine operations that no one had been aware of. The peaceful farmers and traders had been operating a military infrastructure that rivaled the combined forces of the core systems.
Meanwhile, aboard the TSF Nemesis, flagship of Battle Group Alpha, Admiral Chen was reviewing tactical data with an expression that would have terrified any galactic observer. The approaching fleet was indeed massive and technologically advanced, but they were making several assumptions that suggested they had never encountered human military doctrine.
Ma'am, reported Captain Diana Foster, long-range analysis confirms these are not standard starships.
They appear to be some form of living vessels, possibly biomechanical hybrids.
Energy signatures suggest both technological and organic components.
Hostile intent? Chen asked.
Unknown, but their formation suggests aggressive posture.
They're not responding to communication attempts, and they're heading directly for the most populated systems in the galaxy. Chen nodded. Orders from Earth? Full discretion, ma'am. High Command's only instruction was to resolve the situation appropriately. That phrase had a specific meaning in Terran Defense Force terminology.
It meant that Admiral Chen was authorized to use whatever level of force she deemed necessary, up to and including weapons that were not supposed to exist according to galactic treaties.
Very well, Chen replied. Signal the fleet. We're going to try diplomacy first. If that fails, we implement Protocol 7. Captain Foster's eyes widened slightly. Protocol 7 was classified at levels that most governments didn't even acknowledge existed. Ma'am, are you sure?
The collateral effects, Captain, we have 4 billion civilians behind us and an unknown fleet that's bigger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. If we have to choose between revealing classified capabilities and allowing a massacre, the choice is obvious.
3 hours later, Battle Group Alpha established defensive positions around the Proxima colonies.
The sight of 600 human warships arranged in perfect formation had an immediate effect on both the approaching unknown fleet and the civilian populations they were protecting. The unknown vessels, which long-range scans had revealed to be of truly alien design, slowed their approach and began broadcasting on frequencies that had never been recorded before.
The signals were complex, multi-layered transmissions that seemed to contain both technological data and what could only be described as emotional content. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park from the communications station, were receiving multiple transmissions from the unknown fleet.
Translation algorithms are having difficulty, but we're getting fragmentary messages.
Content?
They appear to be claiming territory, ma'am. Something about harvesting rights and inferior species designation. They seem to consider this entire sector of the galaxy their property.
Admiral Chen studied the tactical display, noting the formation and movement patterns of the alien fleet.
Whatever these beings were, they moved with the confidence of a species that had never encountered serious resistance.
Open a channel to the lead vessel, she ordered. Channel open, ma'am. Unknown fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force.
You are approaching inhabited star systems without authorization.
State your intentions.
The response came quickly, transmitted on the same multi-frequency patterns they had been using.
When the translation came through, it carried an undertone of arrogance that made every human on the bridge bristle with instinctive hostility. Inferior biological construct, you will withdraw immediately. This sector has been claimed by the hegemony for processing.
Your species will be evaluated for harvest potential or elimination. The bridge fell silent. In the months since New Eden, the galaxy had learned that threatening humans was generally a poor decision.
Threatening human civilians was apparently something else entirely.
Unknown fleet, Chen replied, her voice carrying a tone that made the ship's hull seem to vibrate with suppressed violence. You have 10 minutes to reverse course and leave this sector.
This is your only warning. Biological construct exhibits inappropriate behavioral patterns. Correction will be administered.
The alien fleet began advancing, their massive vessels moving with ponderous grace toward the Proxima colonies. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Chen made a decision that would reshape galactic understanding of human capabilities.
Signal the fleet, she ordered. Implement Protocol 7. Full deployment.
What happened next violated so many galactic treaties and theoretical impossibilities that most of the galaxy would spend years trying to understand it.
The human fleet didn't just attack the alien vessels, they rewrote the fundamental rules of space combat.
The first wave came from weapons that shouldn't have existed. Instead of the energy beams or kinetic projectiles that defined galactic warfare, the human ships deployed something that could only be described as weaponized physics. Reality itself seemed to bend around their targets, creating zones where the normal laws of spacetime simply stopped functioning. The alien vessels, despite their massive size and advanced technology, found themselves caught in gravitational anomalies that turned their own mass against them. Ships that had seemed invulnerable began collapsing in on themselves as their structural integrity was attacked at the quantum level. Ma'am, reported Captain Foster, her voice tight with professional control, Exotic Weapons Division reports successful deployment of Alcubierre warheads.
Targets 7 through 12 are experiencing structural cascade failures. Admiral Chen watched as alien vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in the traditional sense but rather removed from spacetime entirely.
It was a weapon that existed only in the deepest black projects of human research, technology that had been developed not to fight alien invaders, but to fight other humans who might have developed similar capabilities. The alien fleet tried to respond, but discovered that their weapons were designed to fight conventional opponents. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles were useless against human ships that could manipulate local gravity to deflect incoming fire. Worse, the humans seemed to be treating the entire engagement as a field test for experimental technology. Unknown Fleet, Admiral Chen broadcast as the alien formation began to collapse, "You were warned. Cease hostilities immediately or face complete destruction." The response came in the form of a massive energy discharge from the alien flagship, a beam weapon that would have vaporized most galactic vessels. It struck the Nemesis directly, and, for a moment, the human ship seemed to flicker and fade. Then, it reappeared, completely undamaged, with its hull showing no signs of impact. "Interesting," Chen commented. "Their directed energy weapons operate on predictable frequency patterns. Deploy countermeasures." The human fleet responded by doing something that would haunt the nightmares of galactic military planners for generations to come. Instead of returning fire with conventional weapons, they began systematically dismantling the alien vessels using what could only be described as industrial-grade physics. Ships that had seemed indestructible were reduced to their component atoms by weapons that attacked matter at the molecular level. Others simply vanished as their local spacetime was folded in on itself. The most terrifying aspect was the precision. Despite the incredible destructive power being deployed, not a single human weapon caused collateral damage to the surrounding space. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the alien fleet had been completely destroyed, with their constituent matter either converted to energy or displaced to other dimensions entirely. Battle Group Alpha reported 0 casualties and minimal ammunition expenditure. "Unknown vessels eliminated," reported Captain Foster. "Local space is secure." Admiral Chen nodded, studying the empty space where 300 alien warships had existed just minutes before. "Signal the Galactic Council. Inform them that the threat has been neutralized." Meanwhile, in the council chambers, the delegates sat in stunned silence as they processed what their sensors had just recorded. The human fleet had destroyed an invasion force using weapons that existed beyond their understanding of physics. Worse, they had done it with casual efficiency that suggested this was routine capability rather than desperate last resort. Chancellor, Admiral Zexthera reported, her voice shaking, "Battle Group Alpha has eliminated the entire hostile fleet. No survivors detected." "How?" Chancellor Morduan asked weakly. "How is such destruction possible?" Before anyone could respond, Admiral Chen's voice filled the chamber once again. "Galactic Council, this is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized. However, our analysis suggests this fleet was a scout force. The main body of this hegemony is likely much larger." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If what they had just witnessed was how humans dealt with a scout force, what capabilities did they possess for fighting a full invasion? "Admiral," Chancellor Morduan said carefully, "what would you recommend as our next course of action?" "Chancellor, I think it's time for a frank discussion about galactic security. The universe is apparently a more dangerous place than any of us realized. The galaxy needs a defense force capable of dealing with threats like the hegemony. And, you believe humanity should provide that defense?" "I believe humanity should help provide it," Chen corrected. "We've been operating under the assumption that the galaxy was a peaceful place where we could focus on growing food and raising families. Recent events suggest that assumption was incorrect. If there are other forces like the hegemony out there, everyone needs to be prepared." Ambassador Vasquez stepped forward. "Chancellor, Earth is prepared to discuss expanding our role in galactic security. However, such discussions would need to be based on complete honesty about human capabilities and galactic threats." "What would such honesty entail?" asked Delegate Thulak. "Full disclosure of human military capabilities in exchange for full access to galactic intelligence regarding potential threats. No more pretending we're harmless farmers. No more assuming the galaxy is safe just because it has been in the past." The silence that followed was profound. For 30 years, the galaxy had operated under comfortable illusions that humans were peaceful, that the Vactheri were the worst threat they might face, that their combined forces were sufficient to maintain security. All of those illusions had been shattered in less than a year.
What are you proposing? Chancellor Morduin asked.
A new security paradigm, Admiral Chen replied. Joint human galactic defense forces, shared intelligence, and honest assessment of threats. The alternative is to hope that the next force like the hegemony decides to attack someone else first.
The vote was unanimous.
6 months after the galaxy had discovered that their peaceful neighbors were apex predators in disguise, they formally requested that those same predators help protect them from threats they couldn't handle alone.
The age of galactic innocence was over. The age of human guardianship had begun.
As Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching her fleet patrol the space around the Proxima colonies, she reflected on how quickly things had changed. Humanity had spent decades hiding their true nature, hoping to avoid galactic attention. Now they found themselves in the position of galactic protectors, responsible for defending billions of beings across hundreds of star systems. It wasn't the role they had wanted, but it was apparently the role they were best suited for. After all, when the galaxy called for help, it was the Deathworlders who had shown up. And they would keep showing up, as long as there were threats to face and innocent beings to protect. The universe was a dangerous place, but, for the first time in galactic history, the innocent had guardians who were more dangerous than anything that might threaten them.